Hello, good evening and welcome, or good morning, or good afternoon and welcome wherever you're watching us to It's Your Time You're Wasting with.
Hello, Martin.
That's it, look, I've
Oh,
just.
with us again.
Yep,
It's always us. Why don't we get somebody else?
look,
Oh, look,
look,
just
I've got to
Martin.
put you
Actually,
over there.
just Martin.
It's just me this week.
Just me. Um. Oh, there I am.
Yeah, there you
Phew.
go.
I don't know why. Why are we wearing sunglasses,
Because
Martin?
it's sunny.
Uh, it's not, is it?
No, it's suddenly gone very dark here, probably because I've got my dark glasses on. Why are
I
you
was
wearing.
just showing Martin my new sunglasses. Look at them. Aren't they shining?
What are they? They
Anyway.
look specialist for a reason. Rather, they don't look so.
Well,
They're
I
not
know.
cool down the beach, are they? They're something.
No, they get beaten up down the beach, aren't they? No, therefore they are running sunglasses, but I probably won't need them for a few months.
Oh, I see. Why do you need sunglasses for running? What does it make you go faster?
I'm s- I, I'm such a sucker. I don't know why I need them.
Do you have to shave your legs and all sorts of things to go faster? And was that cycling? That's
Nobody,
right.
nobody. I think it might be cycling. Nobody makes you do that. I think people who consider themselves elite athletes do that, but I'm too rubbish to shave my legs.
Okay. Do you wear lycra? What do you wear?
Wait,
Dungarees.
what do Well, I wear what's called technical material. So sort of polyester basically that wicks away. I know, but it's if you can't wear cotton when you're sweating because it's gets
It
really wet
chafes.
and heavy
Does it chafe?
and chafes. It would chafe, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Ah. So it's breathable.
You hear
Breathable
all of these
polyester.
breathable. Yeah, I know
Ah,
exactly. It's probably more than just mere polyester. I don't
yeah.
know. And but I've got really into the gimmickry. I've bought myself, I'm ashamed almost to say, a pair of carbon plated super shoes.
Oh, I was wondering where this was going. But yes, good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Oh,
I
they
don't know
feel
what that
great. I
means,
love it.
but
Well, it just means they give you this sort of spring
they're cheating. They
when you
make you
sort
go
of
faster.
yes. Well, they're cheating in as much as everybody everybody uses them these days.
Well, if
It's
everyone
the thing. I
cheats,
suppose
then there's no point,
it's
is
like
there?
having a carbon, like a bicycle made out of lightweight whatever it is. What do they make them out of? Carbon something. I don't know. What do they make bikes
That's
out
not
of? That's
cheating.
really
Anyway, no, if everyone has the same
well.
bike, I mean, if
No,
someone was
but
there on their penny farthing, they'd find it difficult to keep
yes.
up. Yeah.
Well, you'd have a lot of respect for them if they won, wouldn't you?
Well, incredibly, yes, but I doubt it would happen.
I'd like to see a penny farthing Tour de France. I think that would be
Yep.
really lovely.
There we go. So there you go. So if you're watching and you are someone who's involved in the
Confused.
organisation of the Tour de France,
Tour de
David
France.
David wants to see a penny farthing.
Get in touch.
Except it wouldn't be. It'd be
Get in touch.
Frank Centime.
I don't think it would because they're not of their sizes aren't a big enough disparity, are they?
You have to go back in time now, don't you, to actually see?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know
Because
we would.
it's a
We
different
would.
different age.
Anyway, look, they can look up penny farthing and they'll get it.
They could, yes, they'll understand it because they're not silly, the French, after all. Look, what are we going
Good
to
Lord,
talk
no.
about today? We're going to talk about
Yeah.
should students see themselves in the curriculum? And
Yes, and this is inspired by your visit to Research Ed at the beginning of the month, isn't
can we
it?
just
And
say
you
that
went
you
to
were there
see.
too, David?
I was there too. Sorry, I was there too. But Martin got there earlier than me and went
Oh,
to see Professor Becky Francis, who is chairing the committee that is in charge of redesigning, rethinking curriculum and assessment. They're reviewing the current system, and she presented at the conference, and Martin was there, and this is inspired by that, isn't it?
yeah,
In part.
we discussed this at the end of the last episode of this pod,
Mm.
and do go there because it's been we've had quite a few listens to that and some interesting
It was a
responses, including whilst it was
was a
out
corker.
live. And you mentioned at the end of it, perhaps we should talk about this thing. And I'll just say the last slide, or it might have been the
Mm.
penultimate slide that Becky Francis showed,
Towards
had
the end.
4 bullet points on it, and the last bullet point is the actual pertinent one for today. And I'll just read out what it said. It said,
Okay.
the review will not dumb down content or infuse with issues or campaigns. Yet the review will, that's in her italics there, that's where I went, will, ensure
Her
that,
emphasis.
that every young person can see themselves in the curriculum and that it
Yeah.
challenges discrimination and extends horizons. Now, the first question I would ask there, is there a
Yeah.
contradiction in those two
Go on.
things, do you think?
Why would there be?
Well,
What's the case for saying there
okay,
might
but
be?
arguably dumbing down content is achieved if you try to organise a curriculum in which every young person can see themselves rather than the greats of history, for instance. Not
Right.
so
Yeah.
it
And
if
the same might be true with expanding horizons.
if in terms of also not infusing a curriculum with issues or campaigns, yet ensuring it challenges discrimination might also hint at a slight contradiction there
And
because
that might be an issue.
it might be an issue. Yes, you're saying that
Yeah.
we want the curriculum to just challenge
Focus on the issues
discrimination.
and campaigns that we approve of and take it for granted, and not the bits that we think are a bit silly.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time of recording, we don't know how she's going to do
No, we
these
don't.
things.
We don't.
So it's difficult
We,
to say that. But
it's the spirit of giving them some help, isn't it?
yeah. So let's explore what the arguments might be. Yeah. So for
Yeah.
seeing
Okay.
yourself in the curriculum, why would you want to see yourself in the curriculum? What's the purpose of that, and what does
Yeah.
it actually mean? Now, to me, it
Right.
sort of has a sort of a sniff of perhaps what is called identity politics,
Tokenism.
tokenism. Yeah. So we're not looking at the great side of things here, are we? Um,
No.
let's try and perhaps
No,
give
but
it
but
in a
the
more
more
positive
positive
light.
side of that, yeah, is about the sense of belonging and relevance and not feeling marginalised by what you experience at school. And there's lots of ways. I think one of the ways that's most commonly thought about is, we're going to read a novel. Let's read a novel with a diverse cast of characters rather
Okay.
than just
Does it also
all.
what about the author as well? Does it
Yeah,
also say
and
that the author has to be from a range of different backgrounds and sexualities, genders, etc., etc.?
it does imply that, doesn't it?
I don't know. I'm suggesting
Yeah,
that it could be both or one or the other. Where
it
would you
could be
weigh it?
both. Yeah, it could be both. I mean, it's one of those things where, were I to write a novel, with this, like, how do I get myself on the curriculum in schools and sell a lot of books? Me as a middle-aged white man, I'm going to write a book from the perspective of a diverse character, or a character from a particular background, with lots of other characters from lots of different backgrounds. So I try and hit all the perfect notes and ensure that I'm playing it in a way that would be acceptable and rewarded. Is that a bit unpalatable?
I don't know if it's
It
unpalatable. I
probably
mean,
is, isn't it?
if we're saying that we want to, if you're, I mean, taken from this angle, the
Yeah,
the usual cry is there's many dead white men.
right.
That's the
And I'm not
cry
dead
that goes up.
yet.
You're not dead yet. Not
No,
yet. You will
on
be
the
one
way.
day. That'll be
I will,
guaranteed. I'm afraid
all
to tell
white
you.
men will one day be dead. Is
Well,
that the?
yes, and then they'll be replaced by others, perhaps. But then we get into the great replacement theory, and oh
Oh
my
no,
God,
don't go there.
don't go there.
It's like
My
it's
God.
like asking Grok a question. This,
Oh yeah.
blimey, Martin, or should I say Musk?
So it should, yeah. So basically, I mean, it's interesting actually because there's BAME, or I don't think people
Mm.
use that term. They talk about the global majority, or what other terms are used
I think
nowadays.
one of the ones that I think's nicest is brown.
Okay, well, it's brown. Is
Mm.
that everyone who's? But I mean,
Yeah, I know.
there's obviously, alternative religions, I mean, whether you say
Yes.
Judaism and Muslims are also sometimes involved with different identities in terms
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
race as well, but not always. Women,
And depending on, parts of different parts of the world, the difference between Catholicism and Protestantism is still today quite an important one. If
well,
you're
we
in
could say
Northern
that in the
Ireland, for
Muslim world as
instance.
well, because you've got Sunni and
Yeah,
Shia, you've got,
absolutely.
you
Of
know,
course, absolutely you have. Yeah, absolutely.
otherwise abled or people who are
Differently
neurodiverse,
abled. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
and LGBTQ plus.
Yeah, yeah,
One
all of
thing that's
that.
not often talked about, but is sometimes, I think, is starting to come back in, is also the idea of the working class. Are they represented at
Class.
all in
Yeah.
the curriculum? And all these people mentioned, and not just there, but also the the sort of way that people perhaps want it represented is in a more positive and inclusive way. So these people are not
Yes.
just the servants or the bit players. They are important and positive characterizations. So picking a curriculum around these representations, and it does obviously alter. It can alter your curriculum quite substantially.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the subject, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of history, in
So,
terms of English literature, those
hmm
are the two
hmm
main ones I think where because of their central place in certainly the Key Stage 3, Key Stage 2 curriculum, that
yeah,
that they make a big impact on the way people see the nation and themselves within that nation. I also, when I
yeah,
was doing Trivium, writing Trivium 21C, I talked to Sundar Katwala, and he
yeah,
said there he was sat in his school in Birmingham, and and they were studying in history even then back in the day, the Tudors and the Nazis. And not
yeah.
once did he find out, well, what am I doing here in a classroom in Birmingham in England?
Mm,
How
yeah.
did we, how, where is our story in the island story, the Great British story?
And
And
I
that would
absolutely, I
be
remember
empire. The actual
reading.
teaching of empire would be quite
Yeah,
important to help that through.
I remember reading that in your book, Martin. By the way, if you haven't read Martin's book, Trivium 20, give something about young people lessons. I don't know. I can't, some sort of long subtitle. Very good, very very good book. Um, and yeah, I absolutely remember reading that interview and the really thinking about the idea that teaching empire, which we're very squeamish about, we're quite sort of ashamed about, rightly. Lots of the problems that have stemmed from the British Empire and have therefore latterly shied away from teaching it. But actually, if we want to make history more relevant to young people, yeah, explaining how people from different parts of the world have ended up on this benighted island makes a good deal of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it's not only for people of colour, there's also the people who would call themselves perhaps indigenous, though I would argue about that.
Okay.
But the white people who live here and call
Yeah.
themselves English or whatever. And even there we get
The
into trouble,
people,
We could,
the people
people
who are
have lived.
painting,
I
painting.
mean, my goodness, my grandmother was a black woman from Jamaica. So, that's
Mm.
why I'm sort of stumbling over this, trying to say, well, am I a white person? I consider myself a white English person, I don't really think there's much Jamaican about me. But her story, how did she get here, is part of that because she came over here in
Yeah,
the early
absolutely.
20th century before the war, but before the First World War, an Edwardian
Yeah.
lady. So quite an interesting
Well,
story
and
there.
even my family history is of both on both sides Irish immigrants. So my dad's family several generations ago, uh, and I don't know the details. It's great grandparents rather than grandparents who travelled I imagine, as economic migrants.
Mm.
And then my mum's family, my mum was born in Ireland, and she, with her family, came over when she was, I think, 9 or 10. And her family are Church of Ireland. They're Irish Protestants.
Ah.
And I know. And her father was working for an insurance company and's got a job in Bristol, where I actually live now. And so on both sides, although there's I think surprisingly little racial diversity in my I've had one of those genetic tests, and it's tediously dull. Although there is a bit of Scandinavian in there, so I think once upon a time maybe Viking warriors might have.
Well, that's my mother's family, so that's
Oh, really?
they can trace themselves back to a lake in Norway called Lake Trask.
That's fantastic.
But,
Can they really?
Well, because of the family name,
That's rather
it comes
wonderful.
from there. So that's
what is the family name? Or
Trask.
are
If you go to
Trask?
I've forgotten the name of it. There's near you. There's a family grave that's grade 2 listed. I've forgotten the name. I'll find out. I'll look it up and
Trask
tell you about
is that EU guy, isn't it? Donald Trask. Is he
Tusk.
now in charge of
No,
Poland?
he's Tusk.
Tusk. Oh, I got
Completely different. Completely
Trask?
different person. Completely different name.
Yeah,
He's
no,
more
I got
elephant.
confused.
He comes from
Okay.
the
Can we
elephants. That's
edit that out?
Unfortunately, we've gone live, but no.
Oh dear.
So arguments against
Not
this.
again.
So there's seeing
Yeah,
yourself
sorry.
in the curriculum. Now,
Yes.
against seeing the curriculum, I mean, what could possibly be the arguments against it? Well, one of the major ones is perhaps the whole point of a curriculum is cultural transmission, and the distortions of the curriculum needed to ensure representations means that the great books, Our Island Story, great works. And notice I'm saying great, so we're talking
Yeah.
qualitatively here.
referring
Great works of art, music, etc. Works of science, historical moments of
Right.
importance, are no longer the grand narrative of curriculum design. So you're no longer trying to tell the story of British civilization and trying to get children to find their place within that story. Rather, you're moving the mountain to Muhammad rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
And trying to change the curriculum around them so that they are central to it.
Right.
So that the level of
And
works they replace, that if you replace those level of works with something that's written more contemporary or whatever, then do you disrupt the curriculum narrative? And say, so rather than doing the Crimean War, perhaps you were doing the Crimean War, you focus more on Mary Seacole. Or do you do the Crimean War so you can get the story of Mary Seacole, et cetera, into your thing? I don't know. I don't even know if Mary Seacole was in the Crimean War. Florence Nightingale, was it? I don't know. Anyway,
Florence Flo was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think she was. But I'm
So
on,
you see,
on
I wasn't
dodgy
taught
ground
it
there.
at school because I was doing the seed drill and things like that, and
Yeah, were you? Sounds
industrialization. We did a bit of
Yeah.
British Empire when I was at school, but just basically
Did you?
we did things like the inventions, great inventions, and
Okay.
Isambard Kingdom Brunel and that sort of time. But yeah, so do we
Right,
distort the
okay.
curriculum in order to bring in the DEI stuff that the Americans the Trumpian Americans are so scornful of?
MAGA, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to give them their due, at the extremes, you do find people saying things like teaching maths is racist and that science is white, and that those are arguments that have been made on the extreme left, and I find them pretty hard to take seriously. But that's definitely a perspective and a point of view that actually, what one set of people might consider the rigor and accuracy of a subject like mathematics is somehow alien to various other cultures, and therefore expecting children from those backgrounds to learn in that way is somehow disadvantaging them.
I mean, what if we say that again? This is the dead white men thing, but trying to say,
Yeah.
right, let's take as many dead white men out of the English literature curriculum as we can. How many can
Yes.
you, or even white women to some extent, because the 19th century
Yeah.
novel, perhaps, what would you replace them with? There's Aphra Ben could be instead of Shakespeare, I suppose. But is Aphra Ben as important as
Yeah.
Shakespeare, as relevant as Shakespeare
So
to our lives today, to the world
yeah.
that we, or do we want to change the world around
Mm.
these figures and say, well, no, she isn't, but she should be?
Right. Yeah. And there are various arguments there that I think are legitimate. I think if you're so in the English curriculum that I've written, Afroben does figure, and so in the story and the development of the novel, I think she plays quite an interesting and important part. And her proto novel Oronuko, telling the story of a black African prince who's taken into slavery, um, does set a lot of the conventions and expectations that we've come now to recognise as being those of the novel, and that predates Robinson Crusoe and all of those sorts of things that we more typically recognise as novelistic. So, in those terms, I definitely think people like that have an important place. But should they replace Shakespeare? Probably not. And I think if you look at for instance, were you to look at the plays of Afroben, like something like the Rover, and
The
you probably
Rover.
know the Rover quite
Mm.
well, don't you? I mean, it's pretty rapey. There's a lot of rape jokes in there, which I would be I would be quite uncomfortable putting into the curriculum. It's pretty
Right.
misogynistic, even though it's written by a woman.
Well, why a woman can be misogynistic, you know. Oh, but it's also of its
Right.
time as well.
It's of its time, of course, and she's surviving in a particular world, and that's not to criticise her, but the quality of the plays that she wrote, that are handed down to us, don't measure up, and so that
Right.
were
Well,
we to replace, for instance, Shakespeare with those things, then maybe we're not replacing like for like. If we're showing children Shakespeare, and then we're also saying, well, there was a woman writing not long after him, and this here's some snippets of some of the things that she wrote. I think that's a different story.
right. When we put Afro-Ben in the curriculum, let's say that
Mm.
you were writing the curriculum 20, 30 years ago. This is,
Yes,
just a little game here. Would you have
when
put
I
her in?
was
Would you have put her in?
well 20, 30, I'd not heard of her.
Yeah. But
But I mean, yeah, in the context of, I don't know, it's really hard to say. I mean, obviously, when I started teaching, I thought very very differently about the curriculum, and I really did think and believe that children should see themselves in the curriculum and it should be relevant to them. And I hadn't really thought very much about issues of diversity, but I was very much in favour of reading young adult novels
okay.
with children and doing that kind of thing. So probably not.
Right. So is
Probably
Afro-Ben
not.
actually seeing yourself in the curriculum if you are a black girl
Well, I think
in
there's some strong arguments.
2025, sitting in your classroom? Is studying Afro-Ben actually seeing yourself in the curriculum, or is it so long
I
ago
think
that?
you're on. Yeah, I think you're on pretty dodgy ground to describe Afro Ben as black,
Hmm,
but female definitely
hmm.
qualifies that for there. So I don't know, Martin. I think there is some comfort to be taken from the fact that the received wisdom being it's all about blokes, and it's really interesting to find that there are women who were writing and producing art and science way back before we might have expected. So I think that I think that it's worth putting these things alongside other things and saying this happened, this existed. It's worth knowing that this is part of the story.
What I'm saying with Afro Ben, by
But
the
the
way,
other, yeah,
Oronuko
yeah,
is about African.
yes,
Yeah. So
yes,
if you're
absolutely.
reading that, do you see yourself? If you're a black girl in the
Right. So
class,
yeah,
are you seeing
what,
yourself in the
what,
curriculum?
well, so you're more likely to see yourself reading Orinoco if you're a black boy, I suppose, aren't you?
Hmm.
Because
So I
he's
mean,
male.
is it content? Is it the author that matters? Does it matter? Does it, or is it young British
Well,
novelists of today? You
so
know, more likely to find yourself
does it?
represented
Does it?
there?
Yeah. So my favourite example of these things is, and I've spoken about it before, is Maya Angelou's experience that she talks about in her writing and her experiences, where she talks about how she felt when she first read Shakespeare's Sonnet 29, and this happened after her experience of child sexual abuse and and how she was made to feel as a result of those things. And the sonnet starts, "When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I, all alone between my outcast state and trouble, a deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate." And she writes that that was me, absolutely me, wishing to be anything rather than black and poor and a girl in the dirt roads of Arkansas. And um, and she completely identified with this white man writing 400 years before her, to the extent, and she writes this as well, and I'm quoting here, that she assumed Shakespeare was a black American girl in the South, and when her teachers told her that the truth, she didn't believe them. She says, "No white man could know what I feel." But somehow Shakespeare managed to capture her feelings in a way which felt completely authentic and visceral. And and so maybe seeing yourself in the curriculum, it's far more important to see yourself in terms of experience and thought and tone than it is on the superficialities of identity, maybe.
Yeah. So but this is about also the universal idea of art, if you
Yeah.
like. There's the content speaks to people. I mean, you can listen to a piece of
Yeah.
music from, you know, completely outside your comfort zone perhaps and find it extremely moving because it hits the right notes, you know, hits those notes, and
Well,
suddenly you find
yeah.
yourself tearing up or smiling or whatever in some sort
Mm.
of emotional response to it, whether it's done by a person who is male white or female black or whatever. But
Yeah.
if we're saying that, I mean, theatre is an interesting thing because theatre,
Yeah.
some quite a lot of theatre now, we have sort of colourblind
And even
casting.
film.
Yeah, there's a
Film
yeah,
increasingly.
yeah. Certainly in the bit parts in films, you'll see more and more people of colour sort of sitting in costume dramas, perhaps some people getting irate or whatever.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
Bridgerton, of course, and centering people of colour
Wow,
quite a
and
lot.
even Dev Patel in David Copperfield, the
Yeah.
Armando Iannucci version of
Yeah, and
that.
people
So
sort
that
of
was very,
objecting to this, but this is a work of fiction anyway. Like, it's
yeah,
not real. It's not real. Hang on. Wait.
yeah,
It
yeah.
could be real. It is a work of fiction.
Well,
But we've got,
there's a level of unreality to it which is interesting, and to be offended by it
right, but
is obviously
colorblind
quite strange.
is saying, of course, to some extent, that we are not worrying about the color of the
Yeah,
skin in this instance. The difficulty is when you're getting into realism as a
yeah,
form and people sort of
yes,
objecting on that, because it's quite a schism for people to sort of step over, I suppose. It's
yeah,
certainly different to what we're used to. But in terms of colorblind casting, you know, going to see Hamlet and Hamlet is played by a black woman. This is quite a jump, but that is seeing yourself in the play literally at one level, but also saying that this is actually open in the sense that you're talking
Yeah,
about from Mayor Angelou. It's open to anyone that we can.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that does mean seeing yourself. So I can imagine showing that production of Hamlet to a classroom full of teenagers, and potentially, I don't know the quality of that production, but potentially, I can imagine at least some of the children in that audience might be like, oh, well, this is rubbish. It's got nothing to do with me. I don't understand what they're saying. And despite the fact that there's a black woman playing Hamlet, they're not. They're not. There's no resonance. There's no meaningful way in which they're encountering that and seeing themselves in that process. And just putting someone that looks physically similar to you in there is not enough.
Hmm.
It's I don't know if it's necessary. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it certainly isn't sufficient.
What's the most recent example of this? The Jesus Christ Superstar done in
Okay.
Hollywood Bowl. I've forgotten the
Yeah.
woman's name. Celia.
Yeah.
No, I've forgotten her name. Anyway,
You're going to say
her.
Celia Imrie, then it isn't
That
her,
was
is it?
Celia.
Definitely not Celia.
But she's in Wicked, the film
Yeah,
version.
yeah, yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I know
Oh, you know
the
who I mean.
actress you mean.
Anyway,
I
I
can't
mean
think.
that
Yeah, yeah, I do.
caused a bit of a stir,
Mm.
certainly amongst again those who perhaps put themselves on the MAGA side of things, because Jesus was obviously a white man, or was he?
Yeah.
And you know,
Well, I mean, it's
I mean, the
fascinating, isn't it? That
representations of
the
him being white have been argued against, of course, over the years,
Yeah, of
quite
course,
rightly.
and as a presumed Aramaic speaker from the Near East, he was probably fairly brown.
Yeah,
He
indeed.
would have he would have stood out quite freakishly were he to have been white. So yeah. Anyway,
But the representations down the years, of course, have whitened him, shall we say?
yes, for
And
sure.
the Robert Powell, Jesus Christ, back in the
And in the
day,
same way, but in the
the
same
blue
way,
eyes. Go on,
yeah,
carry on.
no, of course. But in the same way, if you look at the like the Ethiopian Christian Church, which has a really long, rich tradition, there are really ancient representations of Black Jesus
Cynthia
and
Erivo.
it kind of
Cynthia Erivo.
yeah. But so it makes complete sense that you're telling a particular story to your people, and of course we want Jesus to look like us and assume that he would,
Yeah.
wouldn't we?
So, and this gets into, right, what do we say looks like us? So we've got skin color, we've
Yeah,
got gender, we've got race, we've got sexuality,
we've got
religion, class, all these things.
physical differences.
Can we actually represent everyone in our school somewhere along the line, or is it just at some point
Yeah.
at certain levels it's difficult to represent everyone?
Well, I think it is difficult to represent everyone, and because of that difficulty, we excuse ourselves and say, "Well, we've made a bit of an effort. We've represented some people, and you're, I don't know, um, you have dwarfism, and you're not seeing yourself in the curriculum. But you should get some comfort from the fact that we put lots of other representations in, and it's a bit unlucky that your particular who you are isn't represented. I think there's an inevitability to that, isn't there?
There's also, I mean, certain things about the positive nature of things, because there's what's that book and play about the person with the dog in the night or something, that the curious case of
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
what's it
yeah. The
called?
curious incidents of the dog in the nighttime. Yeah.
Yeah, that's with a representative of an autistic child. That's
Mm.
right, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, that's
It's not
yeah.
necessarily
Mark.
these days a very positive representation, or
Well,
can be something that is already dated because of the understanding of autism at the
yeah.
time it was written and the understanding of autism now.
I don't know. I don't think it's a negative representation. It's a representation of an individual with a type of autism,
Yeah.
and as that goes, it's fine. But to say there's an autistic person in the curriculum, therefore with box ticked,
Mm.
it certainly isn't representing every
No, because
way in which
autism is as wide as it is deep,
autistic
you know.
spectrum disorder might present.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
exactly. And in, if you want to get, sort of silly about it, that well, they haven't quite got my skin tone right.
yeah.
I'm a bit lighter or a bit darker than that. Therefore, am I really seeing myself? I mean, there's a really interesting. I remember reading
Or
about
I'm
this a
African
while
and
back.
you're
In
representing black people with a
Yeah,
Jamaican, you
right.
know. It's so,
Well,
or Nigerian
that's what. Yeah, so I was
and
gonna.
Ghanaian.
Yeah. So I was reading about this piece of research that had been done in Brazil, which basically, and as we know, in Brazil, there's, if you think about like the most famous footballer to ever live, Pele, uh, very black, and lots of other Brazilians who look very European. And the finding is that there's this huge range of skin tone from fairly white to very black, and that on average, the darker your skin tone, the less you earn in Brazil.
Hmm.
And that's kind of, I'm not sure if I've gone off piece there, but
Well,
that is
not in
important and
Pele's case, perhaps.
interesting.
I don't know, but
Not in Pele's. That's
I don't.
hence me saying on average.
Yeah, I know.
Pele probably did okay.
Right. What about the bit where we're talking about discrimination? So
Yeah, sorry.
this
Challenging discrimination. Yeah,
yeah. So who could be against that generally? Discrimination is
racist.
not just a bad thing. Of course, it can be a good thing. We want children to discriminate
Wow.
between certain
Yes.
things, that this
Yes.
is better than this, and favoring
Mm.
certain things over other things, developing a moral code, a sense of right and wrong. But how far do we
Yeah.
take that? Because are we allowing the child to develop as they want to develop, with the idea to be free of us to some extent, or are
Mm.
we imposing a moral code, a strict moral code on them, and saying this is how you should behave, you should
Yeah.
not do this, that, and the other, but you should like this rather than this, but you should not behave in that way, you should behave in this way? How far do we
I think.
constrict
I
the
think that.
child?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful and sensible here about the different meanings, of discrimination. It's a
Yeah.
or like most words, it's polysemous. But maybe it's more useful to think about, like, we want children to be discriminating. We don't want them to be discriminatory, and that might
Right.
be
But
by thinking
let's
about our suffixes.
right. Well, let's play a devil's advocate here. Is Western
Okay, go on.
civilization the best the world has ever known? Let's say a child says it is. Is that something
Mm.
that could be discriminatory? They're making it.
Yeah, I think that is, yes, for sure, because I think that's a subjective opinion which you can provide, you know, all sorts of evidence for, and then somebody who wants to support the argument that Chinese civilization is better has some pretty great examples on their side, and I don't think it's a bit meaningless to say that one is better than the other. So then, therefore, to claim that with any force is discriminatory.
No, no,
But
no,
to
no. But do we
say
allow
and
them
to
to
give
say it?
reasons,
Do we allow them to say
well,
it, or do we say no?
but
You're
but
wrong.
well, I think what we should say instead is to say, let's be discriminating, and let's allow ourselves to say why I might prefer this aspect of Western civilization. And in order to be able to state that preference meaningfully, I have to be able to compare it against the products of other civilizations. Otherwise, I don't know. Otherwise, I'm just ignorant and I'm just spouting off something without any knowledge. So if we want children to be discriminating, we need to show them many examples from as wide a range as possible. But if we're happy with them being discriminatory and just saying Western civilization is the best, then all we need to do is show them the products of Western civilization.
Yeah. What about Great Britain is the greatest? I mean, this would,
Well,
you
same
know,
same thing, isn't it?
well,
It's just stupid.
but don't we want them to teach some pride in nation, British values?
Well, is pride in nation is jingoism a British value? I'm not sure it is. It might be
Well, some
reflected in
people
our
say it
national
isn't
anthem,
enough.
slightly unfortunately.
They want to put
Which
flags on
jingoism?
every lamppost and play the national anthem and sing it to the rafters
Yeah.
every day at
Well,
school.
what
I
the
mean,
people with legitimate concerns? Yeah, those
well,
guys.
you know, in America they have the flag in just about every classroom I've been into in America, and they take a pledge to the flag every
They're
morning
not
or
anymore.
something. Not
No,
anymore.
they don't.
Some
No, it used to
schools,
be the case that
some
they did.
schools do.
Some schools probably do now. Yeah, maybe some states do, but it used to be a federal expectation. I think no
I
longer
think at
is,
Michaela they sing the
and not
national
for some
anthem
time.
quite a lot, and I vow to thee, my country, and various
Yeah. So it's
songs
not
of
wrong,
pride.
obviously, to do those things, but but again, to say or to teach Great Britain is the greatest is just ignorant. We can talk about why Great Britain was called Great Britain, and we can talk
Because it's
about
a big
the
island.
British Empire,
It's the biggest island.
but we can talk about why it was adopted as the appellation of choice, and that wasn't just about the size of the island in the British Isles, um, and we can talk about when the fact that at one fairly short point in history, the British Empire was the largest that the world has seen in terms of land area. And we can talk about that, and we can talk about all of the consequences of those things. And I think this is the argument that I found compellingly presented in Trivium, that we should not only present children with this information, we should also present them with the means to critique what we're teaching them.
Yeah, obviously I wouldn't argue
So
against that. I'm not going to critique that.
no, no. But so for me, the argument that would say we shouldn't teach, for instance, dead white men or anything to do with them in the curriculum just cuts children off at the knees. It just makes them ignorant. And
Okay.
so it's absolute, what we shouldn't do is say we're teaching Shakespeare because Shakespeare's the best. We should say, here's some Shakespeare and here's some other stuff. And there are some people who argue that Shakespeare is the best. Here are the reasons for and against. What do you think?
Yeah, so
And
it's that
then with
stepping
that,
back from the arguments. Well, I'm going to mix
yeah,
this up a bit, because obviously if we're teaching things about anti-discrimination and
yeah,
certain things, what about people, contemporary people?
mm,
What's our attitude towards Andrew Tate, Tommy Robinson, Donald Trump,
yeah.
Nigel Farage,
Your
Netanyahu,
your relative
Putin,
Tommy,
Jeremy Corbyn,
yeah,
that bloke from the Greens, whatever his name is, are all acceptable, or can we? Do
Charlie
we?
Kirk,
Yeah.
who
Do we draw a line
I was
somewhere
hearing
and
everyone's
say?
got to put up a statue.
Well, I'd use this as an example when I talk about this,
Mm,
because a school, the election before the last election that was no, one before that even. They had a candidate. They did a mock election. It was election time, and they had a candidate for Labour, the Conservatives,
hmm
and the Lib
yeah,
Dems, and one student wanted to stand for UKIP, and it was the Nigel Farage version of UKIP, and they
sure,
wouldn't
yeah,
let
yeah,
him. They wouldn't let him
no,
because they thought it was racist. Now,
mm,
it might have been that he was a racist who wanted to stand for UKIP. Of course, I
yeah,
don't know the situation, but do we draw lines? Do we actually say that there are persona non grata, that that there is the
yeah.
far left and the far right, and we get ourselves into all sorts of trouble? But do we say Andrew Tate is a bad influence? Do we say Tommy Robinson is a bad influence? Do we discriminate against those
Yeah.
that discriminate?
Yeah, or do we say, or if we're differently minded, do we say Greta Thunberg's a bad
Yeah, I
influence?
mean,
Yeah.
where do you draw the line? I mean, can you bring politics in at the extremes and actually say
Yeah, I
it's
think.
all okay? We'll just take a step back. You decide as a
Well,
pupil here.
this is
I'm
very
taking
much
a
what we
step
were.
back.
this is very much what we were talking about last week, isn't it?
Mm.
That in our episode, sort of circling around the Charlie Kirk murder, that, and I think in our haste, because we've got so many other things to do, saying Andrew Tate is unacceptable is better than saying, "Oh, it's fine, do whatever, it's fine." But even better than that would be to say, let's really think through the consequences of what Andrew Tate's saying, and let's consider that from as many angles and perspectives as possible. And let's really try and make a reasoned judgment, a discriminating judgment about that based on having all of the facts. And I don't think we should be saying to children in schools, voting for reform is bad. But I do think there's a place for saying, let's look at the consequences of some of these reform policies. But that takes time and effort and expertise.
Yeah, I mean, this is time and effort, of course, that perhaps schools haven't necessarily got. The shortcut
precisely.
is Andrew Tate's a bad influence. This is the assembly on Andrew Tate, why you shouldn't listen to him, and it's very targeted on him rather than what he says, perhaps. But he's a misogynist, etc., etc. But so he's bad, and everything he says is therefore bad because of who he is. But campaigns, I mean, we also get schools to do campaigning. So you're saying there about Greta Thunberg as though she is a good thing. And I know schools, certainly primary schools, who've done things around her that's quite seeing her as very much the hero.
Although when she was encouraging school strikes, I think there were a number of schools that were quite cross about that.
Had she known? Well, so these are very difficult questions that schools have to come up with answers for themselves. But it's certainly about, if you're talking about challenging discrimination, do you talk about those who themselves can be seen as encouraging discrimination of different sorts? And I think, where do we draw the line exactly on whether they are or aren't? And is there a line between those things,
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? Because this takes us to what are schools for, and currently schools are for teaching various subjects to a particular content to a particular level. And would it benefit children to know more about the antecedents of Putin and Netanyahu and Trump and Corbyn? Yeah, absolutely would. But when do you do it? And how do you do it? And what do you stop doing instead? And if Becky Francis's review were to take the view that we want to have a curriculum of the moment that took figures like this or issues like this and took the long view and arranged itself around the different facets that we might come at those topics, then that would be interesting, be very radical. It would make a lot of people very unhappy, but you could do that. But currently, with the curriculum that you've got, we can't do it.
I don't think
except in an official way.
Yeah, I don't think she's.
No,
because she says it's evolution, not revolution, is the thing.
Not revolution,
but this issues or campaigns, and then we're talking. Just out of interest, if fitting things in, if you're going to do an essay on Romeo and Juliet, could you, what could you put it in these terms? What can Romeo and Juliet teach us about racism or anti-racism?
Yeah, I think that would be a very, very interesting question to ask, and a very interesting way of teaching the play. And I think
would it actually teach the play, or would it be imposing a viewpoint on the play that the play doesn't actually have? I mean,
well, it could be. Yeah, it could be, depending on what you were doing. But I think you could teach the play and then say, let's open up this lens. And obviously, I'm sure. Are you familiar with Mallory Blackman's young adult novel Noughts and Crosses? I'm sure you are.
Oh yes. Sorry, yes.
Which which is exactly what she does. She takes the situation and says, how could I use this to think about racism? And
And West
obviously
Side Story,
the way
obviously,
in
as
which
well.
West Side Story is actually dealing with racism as well, isn't it? Yeah,
Mm. Puerto
yeah,
Ricans.
you're right. Puerto Ricans. I want to go back to San Juan. I know a boat you can get on. Yeah. um,
Great.
yeah, no, brilliant. I know, sorry. And um, and you know, in the terms in which she does that, she does it very, very well, and it's very thought provoking. And when children encounter noughts and crosses, they find it quite jarring to think that there's a society, an imagined society, where black people are in authority and in control, and the white people are marginalised.
Mm.
And it gives everybody an interesting way of seeing themselves. But more importantly than seeing themselves, I would argue, and we haven't really talked about this, is putting yourself in another person's shoes.
Mm.
And I think that novel in particular does that very interestingly.
Mm.
I still wouldn't have it as part of an English curriculum, but that's another story probably. But I would definitely encourage children to read it.
You'd encourage people to read it, but you wouldn't put it in. I think that's
Absolutely.
as a
I
last
wouldn't
point.
teach it.
As a last point, I think
Yeah.
it's quite interesting to pursue that. Why wouldn't you
Yeah,
teach
go
it?
on, go on.
Why wouldn't you teach it? Why wouldn't you have it as part of the curriculum?
All right, okay. So curriculum time is finite.
Hmm.
Art is long and life is short. So you've got to make brutal choices. And I think that there are better things that we could choose than that.
Go on then.
If I wanted to do in terms of, issues, and I wanted to do like a straight swap in terms of I wanted a novel by a black woman about racism and the experience of being black in a dangerous world, I would choose Their Eyes Are Watching God. I think it's beautiful and much, much more linguistically powerful and much more impactful and influential over decades. That would be my pick.
So it's
But that's a
better,
subjective judgment, and
right,
I'm not right.
But we have to make subjective judgments when we're putting
We
together a curriculum.
absolutely do. Yeah, we absolutely do. Yeah, and I
Okay.
think that's the mechanisms for helping us make better subjective judgments and having a level of objectivity and a set of criteria to guide those subjective judgments is much more important than in subjects than others. So we haven't really talked about, for instance, that in maths, should we teach the fact that algebra comes from the Persian Empire? Should we teach that who that Marie, should we teach Marie Curie simply because she's a woman? Should we do these things? Arguably, yes, we should. And I think before we went on air, you had a really good example about the way in which we should consider constructing word problems in a subject like mathematics.
Yeah, I mean, do you talk about the history of mathematics? Do you talk about the history of science? Do you bring these elements into play and to talk about the characters, the people behind the story, or not? Because again, are you just teaching science and maths as up to date tools to use?
You've always got to make tough choices, haven't you? I think Christine Council talks about the idea of the core concepts that we want children to learn are brought to life by a rich hinterland, and arguably the stories of mathematicians and scientists and their discoveries bring the science to life in ways which is really, really important and shouldn't be missed. So we absolutely should. But I think one of the seeing yourself mechanisms that you were talking about before we went on air was that if as in the past all maths problems were Jeremy fills a bath and hot tap,
Yeah.
we should absolutely have a range of names and people that demonstrate diversity. I mean, that's a very straightforward, simple thing to do. I remember somebody in a presentation I once did, and I was sort of talking about assessment, and I had sort of some fake students, and they just made the very politely, they made the point that it'd be really nice if some of those fake students didn't sound like they were English. And I was like, no, you're right. It's a really good point, and I should think about those things.
They're not all
and it
Jack
costs
and Jill.
nothing to do so. No, exactly.
Yeah. And on that note,
On
I
that
think
note,
we
well,
can say-
that was a good discussion.
and don't forget to
What
like
do
and
you think?
subscribe if you want more good discussions.
Yeah, and tell us what you think about the extent to which it's important to see ourselves in the world around us, and part of that important part of that world for children being the curriculum they experience in school. What should we do? We can do quite a lot with the curriculum as it stands, but what should Becky Francis do? What should the curriculum review committee advise us to do? What could evolution rather than revolution in this particular area of the curriculum look like?
And
I'd love to hear
hopefully it'll be
your too.
released soon, and we will be able to discuss it in full when we
It's on
find
its
out.
way, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's on
not
its
long,
way.
not long. Obviously, it's her recommendations. They don't necessarily go straight into,
Absolutely.
because then the government's got to respond at some point. So
Of
we
course,
can
yeah.
await these with bated breath.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. See you later.
Goodbye,
Take
everybody.
care.
See you
Bye-bye.
next time.
Bye bye.